Grandma's got her Bible and a coffee can of seeds, sitting in that old lawn chair telling us what this place needs. Not another angry promise from a face on a TV screen, just neighbors in a circle talking about what freedom means. 'Cause round this campfire we all get a say. Red hat, blue shirt, still praying for the same new day. We pass that old guitar and the jar of sweet iced tea. You and me, we might disagree, but we're still one family. That's a campfire kind of freedom. That's the way it ought to be. She says, listen more than talking, shake a hand that's worn and rough. You don't have to share opinions to share a plate and share your stuff. Boots in the pine straw, ashes floating to the stars. We argue, then we're laughing while the crickets play their part. Out here the land remembers every promise that we made. Cornfields, cotton rivers, they don't choose a side to take. So pull your chair in closer, let that old hurt melt and bend. We can fight like Ken at supper time, then bow our heads again. Every promise that we've made. Cornfields, cotton rivers, they don't choose a side to take. So pull your chair in closer, let that old hurt melt and bend. We can fight like Ken at supper time, and bow our heads again. Flag, sun on the barn roof, boots by the doorway, dust on the old coupe. Kids in the backfield chasing that red ball. Radio low, neighbor makes a roll call. From Cody to Cheyenne, voices in the same key. These are our fences, this is our country. Not left, not right, just living how we pray. We're the ones who stay. Wyoming stands tall, we don't bow, we don't crawl. We're the ones they can't control.
Beyond the Fence Line, where we step past the headlines and into the truth. This show isn't about left or right, it's about what's real in Wyoming, across the country, and around the world. No spin, no talking points, just facts, context, and honest conversation. If you're tired of being managed instead of informed, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond the fence line And now, here is your host, Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor in 2026.
Hey, good morning. Happy February 24th. How you guys doing today? Hope you're having a great day. Today is part two. So yesterday and today we are just talking about bills, right? Yesterday we did kind of an overview. Now it looks like a whole bunch more bills actually died yesterday, you guys. Did not get into the general file for consideration and they ended up dying in the House. But anyway, I'm going to cover like how many tabs do I have open here? Probably like 25 bills that I'm keeping an eye on today, this week, rest of the session. Just kind of curious, going to see what happens. Some of these bills I very, very much like. Others of these bills, it's just like, okay, I kind of understand where we're coming from on this, but we're mostly going to focus, I think, on bills today that I like. There are way too many bills for us to cover in a quick 30-minute morning, right? After all, I mean, the House especially spending hundreds of hours, really, this session on getting through these bills and doing all this stuff. So, with that, why don't I'll go ahead. We're going to go ahead and get into the show, but why don't I first start by saying what's happening the rest of the week? So, uh, today we're obviously doing the House bill thing. Tomorrow I'm going to do this. I'm going to cover the State of the Union address. I'm going to give my thoughts on that tonight. By the way, you guys, State of the Union address. Maybe I'll watch that live and you guys can join me online. So tomorrow I'll be covering world news, State of the Union address, Iran, Mexican cartels, and who knows, whatever else is going on in the world by tomorrow, right, you guys? Hard to keep up with the headlines. On Thursday, I'm going to talk about what kind of governor would Joseph be? Who am I? What's my leadership style? And all of that kind of stuff. Just what you can expect. And so we'll talk about that on Thursday. And then on Friday, we're doing that family show. I know we've been promising it for a while. And so we'll be doing that. So that's kind of what's going on this week on the show. With that, I've got a ton of tabs to share. So let me go ahead and go up here and grab this window here. And of course, right now you're going to be able to see me. Hi, guys. Yeah, you're going to see me twice or two or three times. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and throw myself down here in the corner and we're going to dive into this. Let's look at what's going on. Wow, look at that. It's like an echo chamber, you guys. Okay, so with that, let's see. I should be able to go over to this tab and hopefully you guys can see that window. Before we get started you can see I've got all of these tabs open for bills that we're going to look at this morning and review and talk about and all of that good stuff. I don't think I opened that one. I'll go ahead and open that one just in case. But let's look real quick before we get into looking at the bills and thrills this morning. Let's take a quick look at the legislative meetings today and what's going on. Again, you guys can watch these meetings. You guys can, in some cases, you can testify if they've got open testimony and things like that. So you could see we've still got some committee meetings going on. They're going to be reviewing a whole bunch of bills. Some of these you can testify online. If you guys want to testify online for those, you guys can do that. But as you can see, we've got most of the committees meeting today, some at upon noon recess, some at 8 a.m., so you guys can take a look at those. If there are bills that interest you, it looks like Judiciary is going to be covering a lot of those bills related to children today. Go ahead and testify online if you're not able to get to the Capitol. And of course, you can watch it and see the details there. So that's this screen here. Obviously, we could see at 10 a.m. every day the Senate and the House sessions meet. You can, of course, watch those sessions. And then if you press the details button on these, you could see what they're covering for the day. And you can also see how your representatives are voting here in the live roll call right there. So with that, let's dive into bills. So, no particular order this morning, you guys. I just opened the tabs as I went down the list of bills this morning on bills that I wanted to talk about or at least chat about or touch on. And so we've got all kinds of bills to cover this morning. So let's start with House Bill 150, Wyoming Business Council Evaluation and Reform. As the title suggests, taking a step back from the Wyoming Business Council, and let's take a look at what's going on. Can it be saved? Can it be salvaged? Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze right now. And of course, it's going to cost about $145,000 to do this, but it pauses the Wyoming Business Council to take a second look at it. I'll be honest, I don't think that this is a horrible... Boy, I'm going to sneeze this morning. That's no good. Um, I don't think this is going to be a horrible bill, you guys. I mean, this might. Phew, excuse me, boy. God bless me, huh? This bill here, I think that maybe it's worth going. Maybe this is worth going the right route. Take a look. Let's see if we can do anything to fix the thing, right? I think that's not a horrible idea, but I want to be careful with this because does this just lead to the status quo? Does this just lead to phew, boy, I got the sneezes. Does this just lead to doing the same thing over and over again? Because I talk a lot about that, right, you guys? I talk about we do the same thing over and over and over again, and we kind of get the same results. Does this just kind of delay the inevitable, versus just let's go ahead and do something different with this thing. Let's go ahead and get rid of the thing, right? Let's just take care of it. Let's privatize. See what I would like to see with the Wyoming Business Council. Boy, I'm sneezing this morning. Sorry, guys. What I'd like to see with the Wyoming Business Council, privatize the thing, make it accountable, make it privatized, and let's just see what happens. Let's go ahead and just let's do it the right way, you guys. Right? Let's not keep messing with the thing. Let's actually fix it. And so, I suppose that this bill could be an opportunity to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat, guys. I'm going to put in the chat our surveys as per usual. I'm also going to put in the chat the link to the Wyoming legislature's website so that you guys can take a look at that. Excuse me, I'm sneezing a whole bunch this morning. Phew, must be allergic to the room or something. Anyways, we're going to try to get through this without blowing your eardrums out with sneezing here. So we'll probably see a couple of bills to the Wyoming Business Council, different ideas. I mean, again, my opinion is let's privatize it and let's let it be accountable to things. I think that's what we've got to do, And so I think that's going to be the best route. It'll be interesting to see where this bill goes, where this bill ends up. Let's see where we're at on this right now. Oh, actually, it died. Never mind. So this one died anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It looks like it did not get considered for the committee as a whole. And so that is a failed bill. And we'll probably see a few more of those as we go through today. There's that one. Okay. Protection of parental rights, cause of action. This is essentially giving parents the right from a civil standpoint. If their rights are waived in regards to, in regards to the way the government acts in regards to their parental rights. And so I think this bill is important. Let's check the status on this one. So this one is actually, it did make it through the House. It is over in the Senate right now. It'll be interesting to see if this parental rights / cause of action does actually go through the Senate. I think it'll be interesting to see if that happens. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm a parent, 3 young kids. We homeschool. One of the things that I think about bureaucracy in general is before we make more legislation like this is why do we need it in the first place? Perhaps instead of adding more layers to government, legislation, things like that, what if we looked at why we need this in the first place and remove that? Why don't we just repeal whatever's causing this problem in the first place instead of trying to correct it with another layer of bureaucracy or of legislation? Obviously, no fiscal impact really, so I guess it's one of those things. But my approach to governing is let's reduce the layers of bureaucracy, not increase them. And that may even include things like this. What's causing this? Let's get rid of that instead. So just a little bit of food for thought on that as well. Okay, let's look at the next bill here. Literacy positions for K through 3 reading program. All right, so you're going to see there's a couple of bills here. Let's check the status of this one. This one is in the general file in the House right now. We'll see if it survives. It did get through the Senate. You're going to see a couple bills in here for literacy. We know we have a huge literacy problem. But as you guys know, if you've been following me at all, I believe we have more than just a literacy problem. I believe we have an education problem. I would rather see us. Oh yeah, this is engrossed. So this looks like it might go ahead and get a final vote and end up on the governor's desk. Um, we need to fix education. I mean that's kind of, you guys know, that's my nutshell version of what we need to do with education. Excuse me for a minute. I'm gonna find. Boy, I just all of a sudden, I had this runny nose this morning. One second, I'll be right back. All right, that's a little better. Okay, so we know we have a literacy problem. I mean, between 40 and 50% of our kids can read at grade level, right? And we've kind of missed literacy in public education. I think we need to gut public education and restore it to its original intent: reading, writing, and arithmetic, and perhaps some interest based learning, especially in first through sixth grade. So while I appreciate the efforts here for increasing literacy, I can't help but wonder if it's just not more bureaucracy, more layers of ideas without a solution. And I say that very, very gently because I know our legislators are trying to do the best they can with what they have to work with. But I really think just adding more layers to the onion of education is not the answer. Creating more, maybe it's more requirements for teachers, more burden. I don't know. At some point we've got to stop doing this where we keep adding and adding and adding to bureaucracy, and we've got to start taking away. And again, you're probably going to hear me say that an awful lot during this show because that's kind of how what my approach to government is. Let's repeal the thing. Let's not keep building it. Let's not keep growing it. And so I think that's a really important thing to do. Obviously, again, appreciate the effort on that bill as well. Lottery tickets accepting debit cards. This one is has actually, it looks like it's probably going to end up on the governor's desk. You know, this becomes government, and it's all about government, and it's all about money, right? And increasing the ways in which we can buy lottery tickets. I ask, is that the best thing for culture? Making more ways that we can spend our paycheck gambling, essentially, instead of that money going on let's say for food on the table, or uh, basic needs, or going into the Wyoming economy, right, in a real way. We're continuing down this road of increasing gambling and increasing ways that we can gamble. And so while this, I think it's passed relatively overwhelmingly across things. Now it looks like, yeah, the committee as a whole, it's passed. Okay, cool. So does this end up being good for Wyoming? I would question that. I would question whether this is good for Wyoming. And so that's my stand on a lot of this new gambling stuff, or opening up gambling even more. It becomes really more about revenue instead of culture and people and what is good and right, and maybe good for the people of Wyoming. And so I question bills like this, uh, and whether it's what's actually best for the people. Next bill, landowner license limits for hunting areas. Let's take a look at this one here. This one was a little bit interesting to me, just kind of looking at how they're going to kind of more monitor and or control, you know, limits on landowner licenses, how many are available, what area they can hunt in, and things like that. I'm a little bit mixed on how I feel about this bill because I want to be careful. I understand wildlife management, but how much are you going to manage people on their private property and what they can do and how they can do it? I think we have to be careful with that. And yet I also understand conservation and management and things like that. So let's just proceed with caution on stuff like this. And I believe, let's look at the status on this one. It looks like it has passed the third reading of the Senate, has not been sent over to the House yet. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's very possible bills like this will die in the House because they may just run out of time on some of that stuff. Next bill, election voter registration revisions. These are some very, very minor tweaks to current election law, you guys. I don't see this as really creating a nefarious impact on how you can register to vote and what you can do and in effect on that. And I know they were originally, they were wanting to make it so that you had to be in, I think, in the state for like 8 months before you could register to vote, something like that. This has remained at 30 days, and really just has changed some language to the next election. Not really, really a big deal on those election changes there. Again, another literacy program, Senate File 59. Looks like this one looked like it may be recommended for passing as well. Um, and we're just kind of looking at this. I think it still has to go over to the House from what I can see, though. Um, again, another literacy program and how it might work, how it might function. Doesn't look like it really impacts the budget or anything. Um, I think that again, we need to look at education as a whole. And I'm not going to say that again because I've already said it in this show. So that's what this bill does. It kind of defines what literacy is, what the state superintendent, some more rulemaking authority that the superintendent might have to develop literacy programs and target issues and problems that we have and things like that. Looks like it also adds some different language in here for being able to terminate teachers that aren't good teachers and things like that as well. Let's see what the status of this bill is. Yep, it is. It has at least gotten through the Senate as well. All right, voluntary water conservation program. I remember this had a fiscal impact of about $500,000. They want to create a voluntary water conservation program, and they want that to be managed, and that's related to the Colorado River Compact and the Colorado River Basin and so on. And it is voluntary, but does require some government administration. I would kind of ask why we need this. It has passed overwhelmingly, it looks like. They're in the Senate. Um, maybe it's a good program, but it adds more bureaucracy, right? And adds more layers, adds another administrative program. And I would wonder, like, where do we end up? This is voluntary at this point. Um, does it become mandatory? As we learn, we'll learn probably later this year what happens with the Colorado River Compact. So that'll be interesting. That's an interesting bill to watch. The Raven Act. This is one that actually kind of flew under my radar at first, and I didn't actually take a look at it. And it looks like it is in the House for introduction now. This is related to internet crimes against children and a process for that, basically. We don't have it in Wyoming right now. And so, again, anything related to kids, I think is something that's really good, and we could take a look at that. I'm going to go back to my main screen here real quick and just see if there are any comments, just in case anyone wanted to chat or is mentioning anything. I don't see any there. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to over here to our bills. Let's take a look at felony interference with a police officer. So this amendment changes the code a little teeny, current statute a little bit. That basically says, we have the First Amendment rights, you guys, right? The right to a peaceful, keyword, peaceful protest. But there's this problem with some of these protests where you have obstruction of law enforcement, obstruction of roadways, obstruction of buildings, where you're not peacefully protesting. And obviously not so much in Wyoming, but in other places where they're burning things and looting things and and all kinds of stuff. This basically is changing some of our statutes just to say, hey, if you obstruct law enforcement during a peaceful protest, you could be subject to additional penalties, and felonies in that matter for doing that. And I think this is common sense for me that this is probably something we need to go ahead and do. Because again, protest away. If you're watching this video and you don't agree with me politically, we don't agree politically, whatever, you have a right to peacefully protest. Go do that. I encourage you to exercise that right. But don't go beyond that peaceful protest clause, because once you've done that, you've voided your right to protest. When you're no longer peaceful, you no longer have a right to do that. And that's under the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. So that's something to be considered. 2026 general election hand count and comparison. The idea of this bill was essentially, and it doesn't look like it's gotten to the House yet, is basically you could do hand counting. Uh, I believe it's more like of a random sort of a basis. I haven't actually read the whole bill, to be honest with you. Basically to compare with machine tabulation, but we should know this, and that is that statistics say that hand counting is about 3 or 4 times less reliable than machine tabulation. Now, don't be confused, please. There's a difference between machine tabulation and machine voting, okay, where you're voting on the machine and it's all digital. Machine tabulation, in many cases, obviously, is just counting, paper and pen ballots, right? And so, if you look at studies, machine tabulation has about a 0.5% error rate allowed, right? Like a 0.5%. Hand counting ends up being anywhere between 1 and 2% an error rate in hand counting. So one might argue that statistically speaking, and the facts support this, you guys, that machine tabulation is a lot more accurate than hand counting. But nonetheless, they want to double check under certain criteria and thresholds with a hand count. I could go either way on this. This is not a hill I'm going to die on, obviously. And what could it hurt, I think, right at this point? Um, so there you have it on this general election hand count comparison deal. Surface water drainage utilities. Some of you may be aware that a whole bunch of counties and cities across this state are creating these surface water utilities, which they technically have the authority to do under, I think it's Section 15. Yeah, Section 15 of the Wyoming Constitution. But Section 16 talks about you need to bring it to the voters. And so what they're doing here with this bill is clarifying that, hey, you got to have people vote on this stuff. People have got to have the ability to vote on this stuff. As you can see, it unanimously passed the Senate, then that passed the Judiciary Committee. Hopefully, this will get to the House. I think this is a protection of the people, and I don't think this is a bad thing to do to clarify some of those statutes that they got to bring this stuff to the voters, and that's the right thing to do. And honestly, counties and cities should have done that anyways. I would have liked to have seen the state step in on those issues and go, hey, you guys can't do this. You got to follow the Constitution. You got to do it the right way. Maybe have the attorney's office send a little letter to the cities and counties and remind them, mostly cities, and remind them of their constitutional requirements. But anyways, they did that anyways. Zoning protest amendment. So this is an interesting one. There was a bill in the House that went through and failed. This one is going through the Senate. I have a feeling this will fail if it ends up in the House, as well. You got to kind of wonder when developers are putting forth amendments to, development related items, and they're really working hard to try to figure out how to do this. I can see they've tweaked the language in this since I looked at it last. Essentially, what this is doing is kind of changing the way and methods which neighbors can protest a zoning change, as it pertains to property. I think we have to be very, very careful with this because the bill in the House basically, for all intents and purposes, eliminated the ability to protest. It looks like they're working on this one to not eliminate the ability to protest, but it does look like they are changing the requirements here, particularizing harm, and you have to demonstrate in concrete way that the zoning change is going to cause harm to you, and then you've got to be able to protest that within 300 feet and so on. And so kind of raising the bar on what your ability to protest is when it comes to zoning changes maybe in your area. this will be an interesting bill to pass. Again, I don't think it's going to survive the House if it gets that far. So that's just my 2 cents on that one. Again, more Wyoming Business Council amendments. This is a different bill in this coming out of the Senate. Looks like, I think this one, let's see. It's kind of narrowing the scope of the Wyoming Business Council. It looks like they're not going to be able to do anything until basically a detailed review has been done, and they're going to create a committee to do that, kind of similar to the House bill, a little bit less expensive than the House bill. It looks like at $60,000 to kind of review what's going on with the Wyoming Business Council. Again, it'll be interesting to see where these end up. I have a feeling we'll end up somewhere between the House bill and the Senate bill at the end of the day on that. Convention of the States. I know there's a lot of mixed feelings on the Convention of the States, but I would challenge you with this if you're thinking about the Convention of the States. And by the way, this is Senate Joint File 5 of the Convention of the States. Folks, I think we can all agree that our federal government is out of control. I think a lot of us can agree that Congress needs to have term limits, and that the federal government needs to be required to balance their budget. I mean, they're spending us into oblivion. They continue to do so while I sit here today. So I would like to see the Convention of the States happen. That's my take on this. I would like to see it happen. I know people have a lot of mixed feelings about this, but we've got to get our federal government accountable to the people. And this is really the primary mechanism that we have as states, as people, to hold the federal government accountable. I mean, unless we just want to overthrow the federal government, this is one mechanism that the framers of our Constitution put in to the Constitution so that we could hold the federal government accountable. I like it. I'm in favor of doing this. I know we may not agree with the folks that sponsored this. In fact, most of these folks that sponsored this, I don't agree politically with a lot of them. But I think this is a necessary thing for us to do. And there's something, I forget how many states have already agreed to the the convention, the Constitutional Convention. I think it's over 20. I think it's like 25 or 28. And I think we need a majority of states to do this. We're getting very close to doing that. So that's that bill. There are a whole bunch of bills for the Second Amendment in here. You know my stand on this, you guys. I just want to see us roll back to the Second Amendment. We now have dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of layers of bureaucracy on what the Second Amendment means in Wyoming. I'd like to see us repeal it all, maybe make one piece of legislation that has very, very narrow exceptions and rules in it, and just roll back to the Second Amendment. And I'm not going to go through all those Second Amendment bills. There's a whole bunch of them. They will probably pass. But again, I just want it. Let's make it simple. Let's roll it back. The Granite Act is still going through. It's been received in the Senate. This was Representative Singh's bill. It's the first bill of its kind in the nation, and it got national news. And it's an act relating to civil procedure when it comes to novel international tyranny exhortation. Essentially, really creative name, right? Granite Act. And basically, this is foreign censorship. This is a bill which is looking at liability when it comes to foreign judgments and censorship on American citizens. In a nutshell, by the way, again, you can read the bill. It's House Bill number 70. Got a lot of national attention. It's a very interesting bill to protect Americans from foreign censorship. And I happen to know a whole lot about that. I got a good friend of mine who's here right now, actually from the UK. And they are one of the most censored nations now in the world. Unfortunately, the United Kingdom is. So that's an interesting bill. I'd like to see that pass. A whole bunch of bills came out of the Weston County clerk situation, you guys, related to election fraud and election documents and things like that. Most of those bills, this is House Bill 84. Most of those bills are going through. They're modifications to current statutes, giving a little bit more teeth to, I guess you could say, the authority in dealing with falsified election records and things like that. And so, again, something removal of county elections officers. This one failed actually in the corporations committee yesterday. I was aware of this. This was actually going to give some authority, I believe, to the Secretary of State uh, to begin proceedings of getting rid of different folks in the election process and systems like this. I don't think this was a great bill. Probably needs some work. Let's be careful about how much power we spread around state government, right? That may be up to more local authority. And of course, right now, the governor's office handles most of that stuff. Probably no reason why that stuff couldn't stay there in the governor's office, to be honest, rather than making it, giving more authority to state government. This one was a state engineer consumptive water study. This one did not, I don't think it survived. There might be another bill actually in the Senate, if I remember, that might be going through, and that may be why this one was shelved. Um, I would like to see a water use study done in the state, but I would like to have the data centers pay for it. I think we need to start asking these folks that are coming to Wyoming to participate in Wyoming. I think it's important that we do a statewide, comprehensive water study. How we get there, let's see. It'll be interesting to see how we get there. Um, Human Heartbeat Act. This has gone through the second reading in the House. It looks like it did get laid back a little bit there, but this has gone through the second reading of the House now. We'll be interesting to see where this comes up. My concern with this, and I'm just going to say, obviously, you guys know I'm pro-life. Life begins at conception, all that good stuff. I'm concerned we're going to pass a whole bunch more pro-life bills, and they're just going to end up in litigation again. I'm concerned about that because then what happens? We're not doing the durable thing to make elective abortion illegal in Wyoming. I really think we need to strongly consider the constitutional route, and we need to take it to the voters. I think that's what we've got to do. So anyway, my concern with all those pro-life bills that we've got right now that are going through various stages is the fact that, are we just going to end up where we started, in litigation? And then, well, we got a couple more years where we're now fighting these new litigated battles. I'm not confident that making more legislation is the right path on this issue at this time, at this point. I think we could keep trying, I guess, and see where it ends up, but maybe we need to do some of the harder work on that. Fifth Amendment Protection Act, you guys have probably heard a bit about that. That has gone through the House's third reading now. Essentially, this is just clarifying and adjusting some items pertaining to how fees can be imposed and conditions on the local level when it comes to residential and commercial development, particularly in relation, I think, to affordable housing, which to me is a sort of a nomenclature term, doesn't mean a lot, but nonetheless it is. And so there are just some minor adjustments to that there. Eminent domain landowner bill of rights. Looks like this one died in the House. I think there is another bill, if I remember right, in the Senate addressing this. I could actually take a look. Let me take a look. I think there is another bill that is surviving right now that is related to this. We'll take a quick look while we're here. Hey, we might as well, right, guys? Let's take a look. That one also failed. So it looks like maybe we're not shoring up some of that eminent domain stuff this session, unfortunately. So we're not going to be doing that. The Human Heartbeat Act, I already talked about that. So there's a whole bunch of bills related to First Amendment expression. There's a medical one. There's one in schools. This one actually protects, I think, if you guys know about the situation that happened up in Casper, where the young gal, was starting Turning Point USA chapter, and their stuff was being censored in a sense. And I think this bill is in relation to that. I would say, what if we just protected the First Amendment and again left it there? I question, why do we need to make individual pieces of legislation protecting personal expression when the U.S. Constitution does that? Why don't we just say Wyoming, believes in the First Amendment, the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and there's consequences if you violate that, right? Like, let's just keep it really simple for everybody. We don't need 5 or 6 First Amendment bills in Wyoming. Let's just protect the First Amendment, right? Let's just do that and just cover everything at once, uh, instead of creating more layers, I suppose, of legislation and more layers to the onion. Yes, I'm saying that again because I think it's important. But this bill has a good intent and obviously a good purpose in, adding, some First Amendment protections there. So I'll just leave it at that. Corner crossing clarification. Let's see this one. Yeah, this one didn't go all the way through the House. It is now in the Senate. This is a bill that I think, we're trying to figure out this corner crossing thing, right? A whole bunch. And so we're clarifying what is a criminal offense when it comes to trespassing and corner crossing and things like this, and what is not. And they're clarifying some current statutes and adding a little bit to it. It's a little more teeth to it on what this stuff actually means. I think this is helpful. I do. I think this is helpful. Probably something we need to take care of so that there's some clarification there. I know I'm going a little bit over 8 o'clock, you guys, mostly because I think I've got just a few bills left here. A bunch of these bills are now related to kids. They're going through. I think I got a whole bunch of them up. Grooming of children offenses and amendments. Again, just putting a little more teeth in Wyoming statute related to the grooming of minors. Sexual exploitation of children amendments. Grooming of children amendments. Explicit material in libraries. Guys, a lot of you may watch this video and think this issue doesn't exist. Folks, I've seen the books. I have 3 young kids. I should be able to, as a parent, turn my children loose in the library's kids section and let them explore and learn and discover on their own and not have to worry about what they're pulling off the shelf. I shouldn't. As a parent, I shouldn't. And a lot of you say, well, Joseph, it's a parent's responsibility. In this case, I'm going to say, no. I should be able to turn my kids loose in that section of the library and let them do their thing without having to look over their shoulder and worrying about what they're doing. Is it my responsibility in my home? Absolutely. Is it my responsibility when we're in public? Is it my responsibility if my kids are looking at my phone or a computer or whatever? Yeah, absolutely it is. But this is a place where kids should be free to explore and discover and not be. This is not a free expression, folks. This is not a free expression issue. Free exploitation is not covered under the First Amendment. And that's what this is exploitation of children. Let's do what we can to protect them. And this isn't a book burning bill. Just move the books. Get them out of there. And by the way, I've seen the books, so don't tell me they don't exist. They do exist. There's a whole bunch more provisions and ideas for property taxes. Personally, I think what we need to do with property taxes is we need to actually come up with a plan for it. Let's stop adding, again, I'm going to say it again, layers of legislation. Let's actually come up with a plan for property taxes. You guys can watch my property tax video on that. This bill is probably going to die, this cultivated meat prohibition. I actually would like to see it die, and here's why. I think this is a free market decision. I don't think bureaucracy and government needs to make this decision. I think this is a free market decision. Let the free market decide on that issue. Carbon capture mandate repeal. Again, I think this would be good for our core industries in Wyoming, getting rid of some of this boondoggle carbon capture mandates and stuff that's just costing, our producers a whole bunch of stuff. And this is out over in the Senate now. So we'll see what happens with that. And we talked about that. So, guys, that's a wrap. I know we talked about a whole bunch of bills here today, and that's just where I stand on them. So that's where we're at on these things. Hope you guys got some information today. I can see a whole bunch of you are watching. Tomorrow, I'll be talking about the State of the Union address that Trump does tonight. And by the way, I'll be objective and fair about that. If he tells the truth, I'm going to say he told the truth. If he doesn't tell the truth, I'm going to say he didn't tell the truth. And that'll be tomorrow's show. So that'll be fun. U.S. and world news. Thursday, I'm going to talk about what kind of governor I would be. I think you guys will enjoy that show, what my leadership style is, and what you can expect from a Joseph governorship. So I will talk about that on Thursday. And then with any luck, we're finally going to do that family show on Friday. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. It's 8:10, a little bit longer than we usually go. So for those of you that stuck around, thank you for that. And let's get a little tunes going here. Let's see. What do we want to play today? How about we do that Wyoming wind? Let's do Wyoming Stands Tall. That sounds like a fun. Actually, we're going to do this first.
Episode of Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line with Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor in 2026. If this mattered to you, share it. Stay engaged and keep asking hard questions. Be something different. Visit Joseph4wy.com for more information.
All right. Wyoming Stands Tall, you guys. Have a nice day.
Flag, sun on the barn roof, boots by the doorway, dust on the old coupe, kids in the backfield chasing that red ball, radio low, neighbor makes a roll call. From Cody to Cheyenne, voices in the same key. These are our fences, this is our country, not left, not right, just living how we pray. We're the ones who stay. Wyoming stands tall, we don't bow, we don't crawl, we're the ones they can't control. From some distant marble hall, from the mountains to the plains, through the blizzards, through the rain, we the people draw the line, take our freedom back again. Wyoming stands tall. Mama at the sink laughs, wipes off her wet hands, phones on the table, talk of new plans. Granddad at the counter, map spread like a quilt, lines tracing fences that our great-grandmothers built. Caravans of ranch trucks rolling in a long line, county fairground fields, hearts beating in time. Not red, not blue, just a homegrown crew saying we remember who this belongs to. Wyoming stands tall, we don't bow, we don't crawl, we're the ones they can't control. From some distant marble hall, from the mountains to the plains, through the blizzards, through the rain, we the people draw the line, take our freedom back again. Wyoming stands tall. No more talking heads telling us what we meant when we send our money, when we cast our consent. We are more than numbers on a screen back east, with the hands in the harvest, the faith and the feast. Hey, hey, family side by side. Hey, hey, we decide. Hey, hey, listen, DC, you work for us, you work for me. Wyoming stands tall. Wyoming stands tall.